The space station floated in silence above the glowing curve of a distant world. Thousands of ships came and went each day, carrying goods, travelers, and delegations from different corners of the galaxy. To most who lived there, it was simply called the hub. For Ryan, a human technician from Earth, it was both home and workplace. Ryan's job was not glamorous. He fixed broken communication panels, replaced overheated wires, and carried heavy toolkits across long, metallic corridors. While ambassadors walked in decorated robes and soldiers marched in polished armor, Ryan often wore the same dull uniform with patches of grease. He was used to blending into the background, a face no one paid attention to. And honestly, he liked it that way. On one quiet evening, Ryan was assigned to the eastern wing of the hub, where the diplomatic halls stood. The halls were reserved for leaders, scholars, and royal figures who visited the station for meetings. Few workers ever spoke there unless summoned. Most avoided eye contact, fearing they might offend someone important. As he kneeled beside a communication console, tightening a loose set of circuits, he heard a gentle voice behind him. "Is it broken often?" the voice asked. Ryan turned, expecting to see a guard or officer. Instead, he saw a young woman unlike anyone he had ever met. Her skin carried a faint silver tone that shimmered softly under the hall lights. Her eyes were large and luminous, reflecting shades of violet. The patterns on her gown shifted like woven starlight, marking her status. She was not just anyone, she was Princess Lyra, daughter of the visiting ruler from the desert world of Celara. For a moment, Ryan almost dropped his tool. Workers were not supposed to speak to visiting royalty unless spoken to. But she had asked him a direct question. He cleared his throat and answered carefully. "Sometimes. These consoles handle too many signals at once. The circuits heat up. I just reset them." Lyra tilted her head slightly, watching his hands move with calm precision. She did not seem offended by his plain answer. Instead, she crouched gracefully nearby, ignoring the nervous glance of her guard who stood at a distance. "And you fix them alone?" she asked. Ryan nodded. "Yes. It's routine." The princess seemed fascinated, though to Ryan it was nothing special. To him, repairing circuits was as ordinary as breathing. Yet the way she listened made it feel important. She smiled faintly. "On my world, tools are not used so freely. Repairs are done by teams who follow strict orders. But you work alone and seem comfortable. That is interesting." Ryan did not know how to respond to that, so he gave a small shrug. "It's my job. I'm used to it." For a while, silence filled the hall, broken only by the soft hum of the console as he continued his work. He expected her to leave, but she remained, watching with calm eyes. Finally, she spoke again. "Human," she said gently, "tell me of your home. What is Earth like?" The question caught Ryan off guard. Royalty usually spoke about trade, diplomacy, or rules. No one ever asked him something so personal. He hesitated, wiping his hands on a cloth before answering. "It's different from here," he said slowly. "Lots of water, lots of green land. The sky is blue most days. When the wind moves through the trees, it makes a sound like waves. People there dream of traveling, but many also like staying close to home." The princess listened with a kind of wonder, as if he were painting a picture she had never imagined. "Blue skies. I have only read about them. My world has endless deserts. The sky is pale and harsh. When storms rise, the sand hides the horizon for days." Ryan glanced at her. For all her royal clothing and glowing presence, there was something human in her tone, something tired. He realized she was not speaking as a princess then, but as a person. "You don't like it?" he asked carefully. Her lips curved into a faint, thoughtful smile. "It is my home. But sometimes I wonder what it would be like to walk on grass. To breathe air that is soft, not burning. My duties rarely let me wonder out loud." Ryan adjusted the final circuit, watching the console flicker back to life. The lights blinked in steady rhythm, proof that the system was stable again. He packed his tools, but before leaving, he found himself saying words he had not planned. "If you ever visit Earth, I hope you can see it for yourself. Not just in books." The princess looked at him, her violet eyes reflecting something warm. It was the first time anyone had spoken to her like that, not as royalty, not as a title, but as someone curious about the world. She held his gaze a moment longer before speaking softly. "You speak simply, human. I like that." The guard shifted uneasily in the background, but said nothing. The princess rose, adjusting her gown. For Ryan, the moment felt unreal, like a dream he might wake from. But it was real. A chance conversation had begun between two very different lives, one from a desert throne, the other from the crowded workshops of a station. Neither of them knew how far it would go, but something had been set in motion. As Ryan walked back toward the maintenance corridor, he caught himself smiling. He was just a technician, invisible most days. Yet, for a few moments, he had spoken to a princess, and not as a servant but as a person. Far behind him, Princess Lyra watched the console lights blink steadily. She thought about Earth, about skies painted blue, about the sound of wind through trees. And she thought about the human who had spoken as if such wonders were simple truths. For her, the long night of duties and speeches felt lighter. A quiet voice inside her whispered that she would speak to him again. The hub never truly slept. Its corridors hummed with voices, footsteps, and the steady rhythm of machines. Yet there were corners of the station where silence lingered, places where only a handful of people passed each day. It was in one such quiet hall that Ryan found himself again, tools slung over his shoulder, answering a call to repair a data screen. He had almost finished when he heard the soft sound of footsteps. He looked up, and there she was once more, the princess. Princess Lyra walked without the usual crowd of attendants. Only a single guard followed at a respectful distance. Her silver-toned skin glimmered faintly under the hall lights, and her violet eyes carried that same spark of curiosity he remembered from the first meeting. "You are here again," she said gently, her voice carrying a note of relief, as if she had been hoping to find him. Ryan stood quickly, brushing dust from his uniform. "Yes, there was a fault in the screen. I was just fixing it." Lyra stepped closer, ignoring the uneasy glance from her guard. "I hoped I might see you again. The last time, you spoke of your world. I thought about your words for many hours. May I ask more questions?" Ryan hesitated. Workers were not supposed to linger in conversation with royalty. But she was looking at him not as a princess but as someone genuinely curious. And he remembered how natural it had felt before, speaking about Earth. He nodded slowly. "Yes, you may ask." Her eyes brightened. She lowered her voice, though it still carried the grace of one who had grown up in palaces. "Tell me about your food. You spoke of green land and water. What do humans eat?" The question surprised him, but he smiled faintly. "We eat many things. Fruits that grow on trees, vegetables from the soil, bread made from grains. On Earth, every region has different dishes. Some are sweet, some are bitter, some are hot with spices. Eating is not only survival for us. It is also how families and friends spend time together. Lyra's expression softened, as though picturing the scenes he described. That sounds warm. On my world, food is scarce. Much of it is prepared with care, but it is more ceremony than comfort. Every meal is part of tradition. Sometimes I wish it could be simple, like you say. Ryan noticed the longing in her voice. He thought for a moment and then spoke. There is a dish called bread. It is soft, baked from flour and water. Families often share it together at a table. For many, it feels like home. Lyra tilted her head, considering. Bread. A simple word, yet it carries meaning. You speak of it as if it is more than food. That is different. The guard shifted, clearly uncomfortable with how freely she spoke, but Ryan pretended not to notice. He answered with quiet honesty. It is more than food. Sometimes the simplest things hold the most value. Silence passed between them for a few moments. Then Lyra asked another question. And what of your people's skies? You said they are blue. What does that color feel like? Ryan had never been asked such a thing. He thought carefully before replying. Blue feels calm. It feels open, endless. When you look at it, you can breathe easier, as if the world is wide and full of hope. The princess's eyes softened, and for the first time, she allowed a small laugh to escape. It was gentle, like the sound of crystal chimes. You speak like a poet, though you are a worker with tools. How curious that your words carry such weight. Ryan felt heat rise to his face, but he said nothing. He was not used to being noticed, let alone praised by someone of her rank. As the conversation stretched, she began to share pieces of her own life. Lyra spoke of deserts that burned under twin suns, of nights filled with cold winds, of palaces carved from stone that glowed faintly in starlight. She told him of her duties, ceremonies, lessons, expectations that bound her every choice. Her voice carried pride, but also weariness. In my world, freedom is rare, she admitted. Every step I take is guided by the law of my family. I cannot wander without permission, cannot speak without careful thought. Yet here, speaking to you, I feel lighter. Why is that, human? Ryan searched for words. Maybe because I have no power. I am not here to command or judge. I am just me. Perhaps you feel free because you can be yourself. Her eyes lingered on his face, as if measuring the truth of his words. Then she nodded slowly. Yes. That may be so. For the first time, the guard interrupted softly. Princess, it is not wise to linger. Others may speak if they see this. Lyra's gaze hardened slightly, though she did not raise her voice. I choose to speak. There is no harm in curiosity. The guard lowered his eyes, unwilling to challenge her further. Turning back to Ryan, Lyra asked one more question, her tone almost playful. Human, do you enjoy speaking with me? Or do you only answer because I am a princess? Ryan blinked, caught off guard again. But he chose honesty. I enjoy it. You ask questions no one else asks. It feels different. Not like work. Her lips curved into a soft smile. Good. Then I will ask again, when we meet. And I hope you will answer with the same honesty. With that, she turned gracefully, her gown catching the light as she walked away with her guard. Yet before leaving the hall, she glanced back once more, her violet eyes meeting his. There was a quiet promise in that look, one that made Ryan's heart beat faster. When she was gone, Ryan stood in silence, tools forgotten at his side. He felt as though the air itself had shifted, lighter, brighter, carrying a spark he had not known before. He knew this was dangerous. A worker had no place speaking freely with royalty. But deep down, he also knew he would not avoid her if she came again. Something about their conversation stirred him in a way nothing else on the hub ever had. The following morning, the hub was alive with its usual activity. Ships glided in and out of docking bays, workers moved quickly through corridors, and merchants displayed goods from distant planets. Yet in the eastern wing, where the diplomatic halls stretched with polished floors and glowing panels, a quiet corner remained untouched by the chaos. Ryan was back at his station, repairing a damaged data transmitter. The machine hummed and blinked, showing signs of minor overloads. As he worked, he thought about the conversation from the night before. The princess's words lingered in his mind. He had never imagined speaking so freely to someone so important, and yet it had felt natural. He did not notice her approach until he heard the soft, familiar voice. "Good morning, human," Princess Lyra said. Ryan straightened immediately, dropping his cloth on the side. "Princess Lyra. Good morning." She smiled, the faint glimmer of her silver skin catching the light. "I thought I would find you here. May I speak with you for a moment?" Ryan nodded, motioning toward a small maintenance alcove where they would not be interrupted. The princess followed, walking with her usual grace, her violet eyes bright and curious. "I want to know more about your world," she said as they settled. "Your home, your people, your skies, your food, everything you did not tell me before." Ryan chuckled quietly. "There is much to say, and I am not sure where to start." "Start anywhere," she replied, leaning forward slightly. "Tell me something that is ordinary to you but extraordinary to me." He thought for a moment and then spoke of a simple human custom, walking in the rain. "We sometimes go out when it rains," he said. "The drops fall on our faces, and the ground becomes soft under our feet. We feel alive in a way that nothing else gives us. It is not dangerous or fancy, but it is special to us." Lyra tilted her head, imagining it. "Rain falls on my world only in the polar regions. Most of the land is desert. Water is precious and rare. I have never felt it falling freely on my skin. The way you describe it? I think I would like to try." Ryan smiled, encouraged by her interest. "You would enjoy it? It is not cold or harsh. It is gentle, and it leaves the air clean. Everything smells different afterward. Earth smells alive after rain." Her eyes softened as she pictured the scene. "Alive. That is a word my world does not use often. Our lands are alive, yes, but they are harsh. Life fights to survive at every moment. People and animals are cautious and careful. The land shapes them." Ryan listened, intrigued by her perspective. "It sounds like your world teaches strength through challenge. Ours teaches patience, in its own way. Both ways matter." The princess nodded thoughtfully. "I suppose that is why I am drawn to your world so easily, human. You speak of freedom, of simple joys. On my planet, even small choices are dictated by duty. I do not often see what joy feels like without responsibility." Ryan's fingers brushed against a tool, and he paused. "Perhaps that is why we are talking now. I have no title, no duty to govern or obey. I speak freely because I must. Maybe that is why it feels honest. Lyra's violet eyes studied him closely. Honesty is rare. In my world, people speak carefully, with thought for what others may feel or think. You speak plainly, yet with meaning. It is refreshing. Ryan smiled. Thank you. I never thought of it that way. They continued to talk, bridging the vast difference between their worlds. Lyra described her deserts, where twin suns burned the sky and sandstorms could swallow entire settlements. She spoke of her people's cities carved from stone that shone faintly at night, and of palaces with towers that reached toward the stars. The wealth and power she described were beautiful but seemed to weigh on her like a heavy cloak. Ryan spoke of forests that stretched beyond the horizon, rivers that glittered in the sunlight, and mountains capped with snow. He told her of music played on strings and pipes, of festivals where people danced under open skies, and of games where humans competed simply for fun and laughter. Lyra listened with fascination. Your world feels free. Every story you tell has movement, life, choice. Mine feels bound, though it is grand. I cannot walk freely without watchers. I cannot laugh freely without a reason. You make it sound like freedom is ordinary, but to me, it is extraordinary. Ryan shrugged, unsure how to respond. We do not always notice it. But yes, freedom is a gift. And it can be taken for granted until you see a world where it does not exist. For a while, silence settled over them, a comfortable quiet filled with unspoken thoughts. Then Lyra spoke softly, almost as if sharing a secret. Human, do you think your people ever dream of worlds like mine? Vast, harsh, full of beauty that is dangerous. Ryan considered her question carefully. Some do. Humans dream of stars and distant lands, of places beyond our reach. We imagine, explore, and sometimes fear. But we hope. That is what keeps us moving forward. The princess smiled faintly, a gesture that lit her features. Hope. That is something my people sometimes forget. We plan, we obey, we survive. But hope, it is fragile. Ryan looked at her. Then maybe that is why we understand each other. You have hope in your heart that you rarely let show. I have hope because I live simply and freely. Our hopes meet here, in this hall. Lyra's gaze softened, a mixture of wonder and respect in her eyes. Perhaps you are right, human. Perhaps this is why I enjoy your company. You are, simple yet deep. Ordinary yet extraordinary. They talked for hours, sharing pieces of themselves in ways neither had expected. Outside the hall, the station continued its endless rhythm, but in that quiet corner, two very different lives connected across worlds. The princess was no longer just royalty, and Ryan was no longer just a worker. They were two beings who saw each other clearly, without titles, without masks. As the sun of the nearby planet cast soft light through the station windows, Lyra finally rose. I must return to my duties, she said softly. But I hope our conversation does not end here. There is more I wish to know, and more I wish to see through your eyes. Ryan nodded, feeling a warmth in his chest. I will be here, princess. Whenever you wish to talk. She gave him one last smile and turned to leave, her footsteps echoing gently down the corridor. But before she disappeared, she looked back once more, and Ryan felt that silent connection, a bridge between two worlds, growing stronger with every word shared. That night, as Ryan repaired his own tools and walked the quiet corridors of the hub, He could not stop thinking about the princess. He realized that curiosity was a powerful thing. It could cross oceans, deserts, even galaxies. And he had discovered that it could also connect two very different lives, making them richer, fuller, and more alive. The hub never slowed down, but the eastern wing of the diplomatic halls had a different rhythm. Guards paced quietly, servants carried trays of refreshments, and scribes recorded conversations in small metallic tablets. Among all this, Princess Lyra moved with her usual grace, yet there was an edge to her step that day. After her long conversation with Ryan the night before, she could not stop thinking about him. His words, his honesty, the way he described his world, all lingered in her mind. She knew she should focus on her duties, listen to the council, and follow protocol. But a pull toward the human technician she had spoken with drew her steps in a direction she had not anticipated. Ryan, meanwhile, was unaware of the ripple his words had caused. He worked on a console that controlled communication between the hub and a distant research vessel. He adjusted wires carefully, checking the readings and running diagnostics. He prided himself on his precision and calm, but today, he felt an unusual nervousness in the pit of his stomach. Something about the princess's attention made the usual quiet of his work feel charged, almost electric. A soft knock came at the alcove where he worked. He looked up, expecting a guard or fellow technician, and froze when he saw her. Princess Lyra stood there, a faint smile on her lips. "May I speak with you again?" she asked. Ryan swallowed hard. "Of course, Princess." She stepped in, glancing at the console. "You work very hard. Do you often stay here this late?" "Sometimes," he replied. "There are always repairs to do. It never ends." Lyra's violet eyes scanned the room. "And yet, you find time to speak with me. That surprises me." Ryan shrugged. "It is different. I am not expected to answer questions for anyone like you normally do." The princess nodded. "That is true. And yet, I am curious. I like hearing your thoughts, your stories. You make the ordinary feel extraordinary." Ryan felt a warmth in his chest. He wanted to tell her the same thing he had said before, that talking with her made the long hours easier, but he hesitated. There were rules, limits, boundaries he was not sure he could cross. For a while, silence filled the space, broken only by the soft hum of the console. Then Lyra spoke carefully, as if testing her words. "There are those who do not approve of our conversations." Ryan glanced at her, sensing a hint of tension. "Do you mean your guards?" She nodded. "And the council? They watch closely. They believe that a princess should not speak freely to someone of lower rank. They do not understand that I wish to learn, to see beyond protocol." Ryan considered her words. "It seems unfair. Learning should not have limits. Curiosity is a good thing." She smiled faintly, but her eyes were serious. "Curiosity is dangerous when it defies tradition. My people value order above all else. Yet I cannot ignore what I feel, what I see. I am drawn to your world because it is honest, simple, free. And you speak without fear. That is rare." The guard who had accompanied her earlier now lingered near the doorway, clearly uneasy. He shifted from foot to foot, his eyes flicking between them. Lyra ignored him. She spoke with calm authority, showing that she alone controlled her attention. "Human, do you fear speaking to me?" she asked softly. Ryan shook his head. "No, not fear. Respect, yes. But I do not fear you. It feels natural, somehow. Her lips curved into a faint smile. Natural. That is what I hoped you would say. Some of my counselors would scold me if they knew I lingered here. They would call it improper. Yet I feel it is right. He studied her closely. She was not acting out of defiance but out of genuine curiosity. Her words were honest, and her posture relaxed. He realized that she, too, was navigating unspoken boundaries. Perhaps rules are not always right, he said carefully. Sometimes they protect, but sometimes they prevent people from understanding each other. What we do here, this conversation, it may seem small, but it is meaningful. The princess's eyes softened, and she nodded slowly. Yes. Meaningful. That is what matters. I wish my world understood that. Sometimes even small things can change hearts and minds. They talked quietly, exchanging stories and comparing their lives. Lyra spoke of her father's strict teachings, of the ceremonies that shaped her every day, of expectations that weighed heavily. Ryan spoke of Earth, of open skies, of laughter shared in ordinary moments. The contrast between their worlds was striking, yet it only deepened their connection. Suddenly, a message alert sounded on the console. Ryan glanced at the screen and realized it was a warning from the station administration. Some of the council members had requested an update on the princess's movements. He quickly hid any sign of their conversation and responded professionally, masking the tension in the room. Lyra noticed his careful handling of the alert. "You act as if you are protecting me," she said softly. "I suppose I am," he admitted. "Not from you, but from others who may not understand." She looked at him with respect. "You are brave, human. Many would simply obey and remain silent. Yet you speak honestly, even when it is risky." Ryan's face warmed. He did not consider himself brave. He simply spoke what he felt. But her acknowledgement carried weight, and he realized that small acts of honesty could indeed carry strength. For a while, they continued to speak, their words measured but sincere. Outside the hall, the hub continued its endless rhythm. Inside, time seemed to stretch, filled with quiet understanding and shared curiosity. The unspoken tension between duty and desire lingered, but neither of them wanted to break the fragile connection they had formed. As Lyra finally rose to leave, she spoke softly. "I must return to my duties. But I hope we meet again soon, human. There is more I wish to learn from you." Ryan nodded. "I will be here, princess. Whenever you wish." She gave him a faint smile, a promise held in her eyes. The guard followed her, watching carefully, but he said nothing. Ryan returned to his work, the hum of the console feeling more alive than ever. That night, as he walked the corridors, Ryan could not stop thinking about the delicate balance they were navigating. The tension between rules and curiosity, duty and desire, created a fragile but powerful connection. He knew their conversations were dangerous, yet they were also rare and valuable. Princess Lyra, in her quarters, stared out at the distant stars. She thought of the human who had spoken so freely, who had shown her glimpses of another life. For a moment, she felt unbound, as if the universe itself had opened to her. She knew that tomorrow would bring scrutiny, rules, and careful observation. But for now, she held the memory of honesty, of shared curiosity, and of a connection that crossed worlds and ranks. The hub's corridors echoed with quiet footsteps and distant chatter as Ryan moved toward the maintenance area. Normally, he preferred to stay focused on his tasks, keeping to the shadows of the busy station. Yet today, he felt a strange anticipation. A part of him hoped the princess would appear again. He had not expected to see her so soon. Princess Lyra arrived in the same quiet hall, her violet eyes bright with curiosity. Her silver-toned skin shimmered softly under the lights, and her flowing gown brushed lightly across the polished floor. A single guard followed at a respectful distance, though today, he seemed particularly watchful. "Good morning, human," she said gently. Ryan straightened, feeling a nervous thrill. "Good morning, princess. I did not expect to see you again so soon." "I could not resist," she replied with a small smile. "Our conversations leave me with questions I cannot ignore. May we speak?" Ryan nodded, motioning toward the alcove where they would not be interrupted. As he moved aside, he felt his heartbeat quicken. He had not imagined their meetings becoming a regular part of his day, yet here she was, returning as if drawn by the same curiosity he felt. Once they were seated, Lyra studied him carefully. "Human, I have been thinking about your world. About your freedom, your skies, your simple joys. And I wonder about you. You speak with honesty that is rare in my world. Tell me, do you ever feel lonely?" Ryan considered her question. It was personal, unexpected, and yet not uncomfortable. "Sometimes," he admitted quietly. "But I do not mind. I have work, friends, and tasks that keep me busy. Loneliness is natural, but it is not permanent." Lyra's eyes softened. "I see. On my world, loneliness is different. Even surrounded by people, one can feel isolated. Obligations weigh heavily, and voices often demand obedience rather than conversation. I envy your freedom." Ryan looked at her thoughtfully. "Freedom comes with responsibility too. But it also allows choice. That is what makes it special." She nodded slowly, as if absorbing the weight of his words. Then, after a pause, she leaned slightly closer and spoke in a quieter, almost playful tone. "Human, are you single?" The question startled him. He blinked, unsure how to respond. No one had ever asked him such a thing so directly, and certainly not someone of her rank. He glanced at the guard, who shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Ryan took a deep breath and answered honestly. "Yes, princess. I am single." Lyra studied him for a moment, her expression unreadable. "That is interesting. On my world, relationships are often arranged, chosen by families and duty rather than by feeling. Humans, you have freedom even in matters of the heart. That is rare." He nodded. "We value choice. Feelings matter. That is how people connect, not just duty or tradition." The princess smiled faintly. "It seems a simple idea, yet it is revolutionary where I come from. I have watched others obey, follow, and marry according to rules. They rarely think of their own hearts. Perhaps that is why I am drawn to your honesty." Ryan felt warmth rise to his face. The conversation had shifted into territory he had never imagined. Yet there was no pressure, no expectation, only truth and curiosity. "Why do you ask?" he finally said, his voice steady despite the racing of his heart. Lyra leaned back, her gaze softening. "Because I wish to understand humans. And because I have never met someone who speaks freely without hiding behind rules or titles. You are different, human. That is what fascinates me." He thought carefully before replying. "It is rare to meet someone who values honesty over expectation. You are also different, princess. You ask questions that matter rather than ones that follow protocol. That is why I speak freely with you." For a moment, silence filled the alcove, a gentle pause that carried meaning. Outside, the station continued its constant hum, but inside, time seemed to stretch, filled with understanding and quiet connection. Lyra's eyes brightened as she leaned forward once more. "Human, I wish I could walk freely in your world. Feel your skies, taste your food, hear your music. I wish I could know your people, not as a visitor, but as someone truly present. And I wish, to speak with you often." Ryan's chest tightened. The words felt weighty, yet honest. "I would be honored, princess. You are welcome to speak with me whenever you wish." Her gaze softened further, and a small, sincere smile touched her lips. "Perhaps one day, I will see your world. And perhaps, human, you will guide me through it. Not as a teacher, but as someone who shares what he loves." Ryan nodded, barely able to hide the excitement that welled inside him. "I would like that very much." The guard cleared his throat, a subtle reminder of duty and boundaries. Lyra rose gracefully, her silver-toned skin catching the soft lights. She glanced at Ryan one last time before leaving. Her eyes carried a promise, a silent acknowledgement of the rare connection they had begun to form. Ryan watched her leave, a strange mixture of anticipation and wonder in his heart. He returned to his console, but his hands moved slower than usual. His mind replayed every word, every glance, every subtle expression. For the first time, he realized that conversations could carry more than information. They could carry emotion, curiosity, and understanding that transcended rank and distance. That evening, as the hub's lights dimmed and ships docked for the night, Lyra stood at her window in the royal quarters. She looked out at the stars, imagining Earth, imagining Ryan walking among trees and rivers, feeling the wind on his face. She thought of the simple joys he had described, of laughter shared without expectation, of freedom that humans often took for granted. A question stirred within her, one she was not ready to voice aloud, but one that would shape the moments to come. Perhaps there was more to learn, more to experience, and more to understand about the human before her. She realized that curiosity could be more than a habit. It could be a bridge between worlds, a spark that connected lives in ways neither had expected. The next morning, the hub was alive with movement. Ships glided smoothly across docking bays, workers hurried along corridors, and distant announcements echoed from unseen speakers. Yet for Ryan, the world outside seemed less important than the quiet anticipation that filled his heart. He arrived at the maintenance hall early, checking the systems he had been assigned. The lights hummed softly, panels glowed with information, and circuits carried signals to distant corners of the hub. Yet his focus kept shifting, drawn to one thought: Princess Lyra. She arrived soon after, walking with her usual grace, violet eyes scanning the hall. The single guard followed closely, though he kept his distance, respectful of the space the princess had chosen. "Good morning, human," she said softly, her voice carrying the same gentle curiosity that had drawn him to her before. Ryan straightened, swallowing nervously. "Good morning, princess. I hope your rest was peaceful." Lyra nodded. "It was. I thought about our conversation last night. Your honesty lingers with me. You spoke freely when I asked about your life, your world, and even your feelings. Today, I have another question, if you do not mind." Ryan nodded, preparing himself. "Ask anything, princess. I will answer honestly." She studied him for a moment, then leaned closer slightly. Human, why are you single? What does it mean for you to be alone, yet free? Ryan paused. The question was personal, but not uncomfortable. He considered carefully before speaking, aware of the weight her words carried. To be single, he said slowly, means I have not chosen a partner yet. It does not mean loneliness, though sometimes it comes. Being single allows me to make choices freely, to explore, to learn, and to understand the world on my own terms. It gives me space to grow, to discover what is important to me. Lyra listened intently, her violet eyes fixed on him. So being alone is not a weakness. It is a chance to be yourself, to decide your path. Yes, Ryan replied, feeling a quiet confidence in his voice. Freedom carries responsibility. I am free to make choices, but I must also accept the consequences. It is not always easy, but it is meaningful. The princess leaned back slightly, considering his words. Humans value choice above duty in these matters. That is rare where I come from. We often marry and bond according to expectations rather than desire. You follow your heart. Ryan smiled faintly. I try to. Life is too short to ignore what we truly feel. We all have responsibilities, but there is also room for personal truth. That is what makes life worth living. Lyra's lips curved into a soft smile, her eyes reflecting a mix of admiration and curiosity. I understand now. Your honesty, it is not just words. It is a reflection of your world. And it is beautiful. You make it sound simple, yet profound. He felt warmth rise in his chest. He had not expected praise from royalty, yet her words carried no judgment, only genuine understanding. Thank you, Princess. I speak freely because you listen freely. That makes it easier to be honest. They continued to talk, exploring the idea of freedom, choice, and the meaning of connection. Lyra spoke of her people, bound by tradition and expectation, and the loneliness that sometimes followed despite the presence of family and advisors. She admitted that she longed to experience freedom, to see the world through her own eyes rather than through the lens of duty. Ryan shared stories of humans navigating their own lives, of friendships and discoveries, of moments when choices carried weight and meaning. He spoke of laughter shared without reason, of tears shed for understanding, and of the quiet strength that came from being true to oneself. The conversation stretched for hours, and the unspoken connection between them grew stronger. Lyra found herself captivated not only by his words but by the sincerity behind them. She realized that humans carried a resilience and honesty that her world rarely allowed, and that Ryan embodied these qualities naturally. Suddenly, she spoke softly, almost hesitantly. Human. I have another question. It may seem strange, but, do you think a connection like ours could exist between worlds, between ranks, between lives so different? Ryan looked at her carefully. The question was delicate, yet his answer came without hesitation. Yes, Princess. Connection is not limited by distance, rank, or origin. It comes from understanding, honesty, and shared curiosity. We have those things. That is what matters. Her eyes brightened at his words. So it is possible, that what we feel is real, not merely circumstance or duty. Yes, he said gently. It is real. And it is worth respecting and nurturing. That is what makes it meaningful. For a moment, silence passed between them. Neither spoke, but both understood the weight of their words. Outside, the hub continued its endless rhythm, but inside the alcove, Time seemed to stand still. Lyra finally rose, her posture regal yet softened by thought. I must return to my duties, human. But I will carry this understanding with me. Your words, they have given me hope that freedom and honesty can exist even in my world. Ryan nodded, feeling a quiet pride and warmth. I am glad. And I will be here, Princess. Whenever you wish to speak, I will listen and answer. She gave him a final smile, one that conveyed trust, curiosity, and a promise of more to come. Her guard followed quietly, keeping distance, yet the princess's eyes lingered on him for a moment longer before she left. Ryan returned to his work, but his hands moved slowly. His thoughts replayed every word, every glance, every unspoken feeling. He realized that honesty was powerful, that connection could cross worlds, and that trust was a rare and precious gift. That evening, Princess Lyra stood at the window of her quarters, looking at the distant stars that stretched endlessly across space. She imagined Earth, imagining the human who had spoken so freely, who had shown her the value of choice, freedom, and honesty. She felt a quiet certainty that their connection was not fleeting, but meaningful. And somewhere deep in the heart of the hub, Ryan finished his work and paused, thinking of the princess. He understood now that their bond was more than curiosity. It was respect, honesty, and a meeting of worlds that had rarely touched each other. He felt a quiet strength in knowing that their connection mattered, that it was real, and that it could grow beyond expectation. Both of them understood something silently: honesty could bridge worlds, choice could create freedom, and connection could exist even where rules tried to prevent it. And in that understanding, they found hope, courage, and the quiet beginnings of trust that would shape their journey together. The day on the hub began as usual. Ships glided smoothly in the docking bays, mechanical hums echoed through corridors, and distant voices carried announcements and instructions. Yet in the quiet alcove where Ryan worked, there was a sense of anticipation that made the usual rhythm of work feel lighter. He moved among the consoles, checking systems, adjusting circuits, and ensuring everything was in order. Yet his mind kept returning to the princess. The conversations they had shared, the honesty they had exchanged, and the quiet understanding between them lingered in his thoughts like a gentle spark. Princess Lyra appeared shortly afterward, her presence immediately filling the hall with a sense of calm authority. Her violet eyes sought him out, and for a moment, the busy corridors seemed to fade away. She walked with her usual grace, the silver sheen of her skin glowing softly under the hall lights. "Good morning, human," she said softly, her voice carrying the warmth that had grown familiar over their meetings. "Good morning, Princess," Ryan replied, straightening. "I hope you slept well." "I did," she said. "I thought about our last conversation. You spoke of choice, honesty, and freedom. I carry your words with me always. Today, I wish to speak more, if you are willing." Ryan nodded. "I am always willing." They moved to a quiet corner, away from the guards and the flow of other workers. For a long moment, they watched the soft lights reflect off the polished floors, each aware of the fragile connection that had formed between them. "I have thought about our worlds," Lyra said, her voice gentle. "About how different they are. My world has rules, expectations, and traditions that weigh heavily. Your world seems open, free, full of choice. And yet, despite these differences, I feel we understand each other." Ryan considered her words. "Understanding does not require sameness, Princess. It comes from honesty, listening, and respect. That is how people connect, even when they are different. And that is what we have." Her eyes brightened, a faint smile touching her lips. Yes. That is what I feel too. I have never met anyone like you, human. You speak plainly, yet your words carry depth. You make the ordinary seem extraordinary. Ryan felt warmth in his chest. And you make the impossible seem reachable. You show that even someone bound by duty can choose honesty, can seek understanding, can learn freely. That is rare and valuable. For a while, silence passed between them, comfortable and filled with thought. Then Lyra spoke again, her voice softer. I have learned something important from you. That connection is not about rank, titles, or crowns. It is about seeing another person as they truly are, and allowing them to see you in return. Ryan nodded. Exactly. Titles are only words. They do not define the heart or the mind. What matters is truth, curiosity, and the willingness to understand. The princess studied him, her gaze filled with admiration. I wish my world could see it that way. Too often, people obey rules without question, follow tradition without understanding. They forget that the simplest moments, the quiet conversations, can carry meaning beyond measure. He smiled. Perhaps that is why our meeting is important. It reminds us that small actions, honest words, and shared curiosity are powerful. They can cross worlds, change hearts, and create understanding where none existed. Lyra's lips curved into a faint, thoughtful smile. I will carry that thought with me. And I will remember that honesty and curiosity can be more important than any rule. That is why I will return to speak with you again, human. You have taught me that connection is not limited by duty or title. Ryan felt a quiet pride. And you have taught me that courage can take many forms, even in those who are bound by responsibility. You speak freely despite expectations, and that inspires honesty in return. For a long while, they spoke quietly, exchanging thoughts about life, freedom, and the meaning of understanding. Outside the alcove, the hub moved with its endless rhythm, but inside, time seemed to stretch, allowing two lives from different worlds to meet on equal ground. Finally, Lyra stood, straightening her gown. Her eyes met his with a mixture of curiosity and warmth. I must return to my people now, she said softly. But I will carry this conversation, and the promise it holds, with me. One day, perhaps, our worlds will meet again, not just through words, but through understanding and shared trust. Ryan nodded, feeling the weight of her words. I will be here, princess. Always willing to speak, always willing to listen. She smiled, a radiant, sincere expression that lingered in his memory long after she had gone. The guard followed at a distance, silent and respectful, yet the princess's presence had already left a mark in the quiet hall. As the day continued, Ryan worked with renewed energy. His thoughts remained on the conversations, the lessons learned, and the bond formed. He realized that sometimes, the most meaningful moments were not those of grandeur or ceremony, but those of quiet honesty and shared understanding. Meanwhile, in her quarters, Princess Lyra gazed at the stars through the tall window. She thought of Earth, of its blue skies and open fields, and of the human who had shown her a glimpse of freedom and choice. She understood now that connection was a bridge, built from curiosity, honesty, and trust. And she knew that even amidst duty, rules, and expectation, it was possible to form bonds that were real, meaningful, and lasting. She smiled quietly, imagining the conversations yet to come, the stories yet to be shared, and the understanding that could grow between worlds. And somewhere deep in the heart of the hub, Ryan continued his work, knowing that their connection mattered, that their words carried weight, and that even small, honest moments could change perspectives and hearts across galaxies. And in that shared understanding, both realized a simple truth: titles and crowns might dictate appearances, but honesty, curiosity, and connection transcended boundaries, reaching beyond worlds, beyond duty, and beyond expectation. It was a quiet beginning, yet a powerful one. One conversation at a time, one choice at a time, they had discovered that humanity's strength was not only in its technology, its courage, or its exploration, but in its honesty, freedom, and capacity to see others as they truly were.